And welcome back to another episode of the Young Dad Podcast. Whether you're outside grilling, mowing the lawn, changing dirty diapers, or maybe you just got a moment to sit back, relax, and listen to your favorite podcast, whatever you're at, wherever you're doing. Thank you for listening. I'm your host, Jay, and today I have a fantastic guest who's all about bringing joy, creativity, and connection into everyday lives of parents and their children. Joining me today is Craig, a seasoned camp director, children's musician, and proud father of two. Craig is the creator of the parenting A to E method. Yes, just A to E, you heard that right. A transformative approach that helps parents reduce stress and increase joy, laughter, connection, and love in the home. With decades of experience working with kids and training hundreds of people on how to effectively engage with them, Craig has a wealth of knowledge to share. He's performed family concerts all over the country and even created a weekly show called Parks Party Central. That's a mouthful. At the time, you created that with your 5-year-old daughter at the time, I believe. Inspiring families to create positive memories together. Craig is also the father of a son on the autism spectrum. So a unique insight there as well that we're going to be able to dive into today, giving him unique insight to the parenting with compassion and understanding. Today we'll dive into how parents can tap into their own creativity to make everyday moments special and memorable. We'll explore the A to E parenting method a little bit, learn some practical tips for lifting the mundane into the memorable. Sorry, my speech impediment came in there. Sorry, everyone, that you had to hear that. So grab a seat, get comfy, grab a juice box, grab a snack, and Craig, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jay. I'm honored to be here.
Of course, happy to have you. Excited to have you talk about all the different things that we get to talk about today. It's always an exciting time where we get to just talk parenting, dad to dad, and talk the different things like that. So sorry, everyone that had to hear my speech impediment there. It's very, very top of the episode, but it'll happen from time to time. It's okay. I do want to shout out Podbeat app right here before we get started, before we get too far into it. That opening beat that you heard is from the Podbeat app. That's the lo-fi beat. Podbeat allows you to turn any podcast or any audiobook into a musical experience by allowing you to overlay a beat with it. Super cool. Check it out. Download the app for free from the App Store or Google Play Store. So enough of the business. That's all the things. Craig, like I said, it's such a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Your journey as a camp director, musician, and father, truly inspiring. Could you share a bit about your background and what led you to develop the parenting A to E method?
Yeah, definitely. I've always enjoyed working with kids. Even as a young teenager, I started babysitting. Right, just earn a little bit of money, but what I discovered was I really, really loved hanging out with kids, and it was just great and it was fun. Later, when I was around 19, later teenager, I got my first job as a camp counselor. And there were about 60 kids at this camp, and there were only 6 of us counselors. So it was a 1-to-10 ratio. And this was in Los Angeles. And it was my first time being a camp counselor. And I could not believe I was getting paid to hang out with these kids. And every day I was excited to get to work. And I noticed that my relationship with the campers, it was just a little bit different than my peers who I was working with. They were fine people, but they didn't seem to have the same kind of energy for them. I think it was just a summer job. For me, I was lit up. The connection was so joyful and fun. Again, I just couldn't believe, like, I'm getting paid to do this. And so I then eventually became a very young camp director. A couple summers later, I ended up being a counselor at a residential camp working with teenagers. And that also kind of blew my mind, just how powerful that was. And I was there for a couple of summers. And then at the age of 23, I became a very, very young day camp director. I created one for the JCC, and I was a little bit scared because I was very young and people were trusting me with their children. But what I discovered was that my experience of working with kids already and being trained at a couple of different camps, along with kind of my own philosophy, I was able to create a very, very successful summer camp. And I enjoyed training people how to work with kids. And my bond with the children was so deep. I realized that whatever gifts I had, part of the gifts I had was I was able to connect with kids where they felt safe. I was able to develop trust and really joyful connections. And eventually bring music into the experience too, which really taught me a lot. And it's actually part of the parenting A to E method, which I know we'll talk about. But I really wanted to provide kids a safe space. And what that means as a space where they could really be themselves. It's interesting, Jay, when you started the podcast, your speech impediment came through, and I didn't know that you had one. And then that happened. And then you you were apologizing for it, right? And it struck me because I'm like, well, if that's something that you have, then like a part of me is like, man, like you shouldn't have to apologize for something that you have. It's a part of you, like people should be embraced for the totality of who they are. And in terms of my work with kids, like if I had I've had a lot of kids at the camps I've run. I was a director for 27 summers. I ended up creating 2 summer camps. One I ran for 3 years, and then I ran another one for 24 years. And I had a lot of kids with special needs. Right? I had kids on the autism spectrum, kids with Down syndrome, kids with speech impediments, all sorts of things. And my main thing was to create a space where every child could truly just be themselves without fear, without worry of being teased or ridiculed, but actually celebrated, right? By the other campers and by the staff. And I think that that's why the camps I ran were so successful, because people felt that safety, that freedom to fully be themselves. And I tried to live it myself because I'm in many ways naturally kind of a goofball, and I was able to be incredibly silly and over the top, and creating that sense of freedom and seeing the effects it had, not just on the campers, but on the staff as well, was really powerful. And so I eventually realized that I want to bring this to parents. I want to be able to train parents the way that I trained my staff, that I think are really translatable to parenthood, not just camp counselors. Kind of some universal principles that apply to if you're working with other people's kids or your own. And certainly, I'm now a dad. I've got two kids, as you mentioned earlier. I have a 20-year-old son who's on the autism spectrum, and I've got a 10-year-old girl who's neurotypical. And certainly having a kid on the spectrum really, really taught me a lot. And my wife and I ended up working with a lot of specialists to be able to help my son as much as possible. And so taking the experience of working with all of these specialists, my own experience of working with thousands of kids and training all these kids, and being a professional musician, I realized I can actually help a lot of parents. And so I put together the parenting to E method. And when you mentioned it earlier, you're like, that's right, A to E, right? Because most people are used to A to Z. But I wanted to catch the attention because it is a little bit different. So it's like, well, what is that A and what is that E? I think for most of us, parents who really care about and love our children and care about the relationship that we have with our children, we want to be effective. Like we have dreams and we have visions for the type of relationship we want to create. So the E in parenting, A to E, is effectiveness. So if we want to get to E, to being effective, which means creating a loving, trusting, beautiful relationship with our kids, we have to master the A. So the question is, well, what is the A? And ultimately, the A stands for affect. Because ultimately, all we have in this world that we move around with is our bodies and our voice. That's what we have to work with. And so if we can master our affect, which means how do we actually, the affect of our body and the affect of our voice, if we can master that and bring some mindfulness to it, then we can maximize and be intentional about the kind of relationship we want to create. So the affect leads to the effectiveness of the relationship that we want. And so my whole method breaks down, how do we use our body? How do we use our face? How do we use our shoulders and our arms and our hands? Because there's actually a lot of science to this in how we use that. And then in terms of our voice, it's not just the words that we say. It's the tone, it's the pitch, it's the volume. So there's all of these elements that I teach. And when you become mindful of them, you can use them to your advantage to create the kind of relationship you really, really want to create with your own children.
That's really cool. No, I love what you said. All the things you said overall, but the most important thing there is being able to create a space where our kids can really just be themselves, right? That's really hard to find. That's really hard to come by, especially now. 2024, almost 2025. We're recording this in 2024. It'll come out in 25, which is kind of weird to think about um, when something's going to come out in the next year or so far out, and you're like, I don't know what the future's going to look like. I hope that matches where we're kind of at, like, in the world. But I've learned over time that most podcasts are pretty evergreen, to where you can kind of post them whenever, however you want to. So that's the really cool thing about this kind of format of podcasting, is that they all kind of work whenever, in any order. There can be better orders, but that's something. Anyways, I digress there. What I was saying is that being able to create a space where kids can just be free, be themselves, is really important. And yeah, I don't think I've ever had that bad of a stutter on a podcast before, which was really weird. I'm not used to having that happen, like, on a podcast. Normally, I can slow myself down if I need to slow myself down to articulate my words, if I'm going too fast or anything like that. I can slow down. But what's
So,
really
Jay, can I ask
important,
you a question? Like, I'm curious, like, I imagine, like, when you grew up, you had the speech impediment.
I've had it. Yeah, I've had it my whole life. I think I've always just been able to, work around it. I don't think I was really impacted by it when I was younger. I think I had more of a lisp when I was younger. And then the stutter developed, I think, in my teenage years is when that developed more so. And I found it more with myself. So there was that. But
Were you ever teased as a kid for that?
I was teased for so many things as a kid. It was crazy. I don't think that was one of them, though, that I was teased for. I was teased for other things. I was teased for plenty of other things as a kid.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? We've all had those experiences, and I know there are people say, well, the kids will be kids, but as a camp director and somebody who got to really forge what the environment was like, I actually believe you can cultivate kindness in kids and cultivate a
Well,
society where it doesn't have to be like that.
no, and it's not like that. Like, in reality, the reality of it is that your kids are assholes because you're probably an asshole. Some kids are more naturally an asshole, but most of it, I would say, upwards of, let's go with the 80-20 rule, just to be kind here. 80% of kids are pretty good, pretty nice, pretty kind, decent kids, right? The 20% that are the assholes, that's all learned behavior. And 100% of these kids, it's all learned behavior from somewhere, from someone that they're around a lot of the time. But let's just say, for the sake of for what I'm saying here, 80-20. So 80% is, you know, good, 20% here is bad. So only the 20% is maybe not learned from somewhere else of the kids here. So maybe they just get theirs naturally, or maybe they get theirs through other means or whatnot. But then that also still comes back to the parent, because the parent should be able to, monitor those things, where they're learning this information from, where they're picking up on these things. I don't believe that any of it's like truly natural, except for maybe a very slim percentage. But yeah, it's learned behavior at the end of the day.
Yeah, right. And so what do kids learn? They learn what they're taught. And look, we're all human beings. We're all going to have moments where we're awful to other human beings because we're stressed, we're tired, we're hungry.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't want to make it seem like the camps I ran never had any. I mean, there's always conflict, right? But we
Yeah,
would
naturally.
but we would actually teach conflict resolution, right? We would teach repair. We would teach kids, how do you, like, after you had a moment that wasn't your best moment, how can you repair that rather than having like lingering kind of anger and tension, and most kids are not taught that, right? If a kid goes to a teacher or goes to a counselor, most of the teachers will say, okay, well, wait here, I'll take care of it. And that's a message that you send to kids that says, we don't believe in your ability to take care of it, so we will.
Yeah.
And I think that if more of us can actually coach our kids on how to be able to go up to another human being and say, hey, listen, when you said that or you did that, that didn't really work for me, and I'm wondering if we can get this worked out. And it was amazing to see how powerful that is to actually teach even young kids, right? Or even for a kid to go to another kid and be like, hey, when you did that to me or said that to me, I'm just curious, like, did I do something to upset you? Because oftentimes there's just miscommunications. And when human beings can learn at an early age to communicate effectively, I think the world ends up being radically different. But those are skills that aren't usually taught.
No, it's not, right? The kids now, especially in schools, are taught a lot of learned helplessness. They're taught to be helpless and how someone else fix a problem for them, versus trying to fix it themselves, even on like a very basic, like, conflict resolution kind of level. Like, I've heard schools refer to this kind of situation as like a restorative circle or something, and it's like an amazing thing when kids can do it themselves. But it's like that should just be normal. Craig, if I have an issue with you, if you say something that maybe I don't agree with on the podcast, I'll more than likely say something back right away in the podcast. But for respect's sake, it'll be, hey, you know what? After while we were recording this part, kind of bothered me, man. I don't know where you were getting off there, or what kind of angle you were taking, but hey, wasn't cool, right? That's what we're gonna do because we're adults, right? That's how we're gonna handle it. And you're gonna explain your side. I'm gonna listen to. Oh, okay. You didn't actually mean nothing by it. I got you. I got you. Maybe you did
Right.
mean something by it.
But it's funny because most adults don't. Most adults won't do that. Like most adults will go to other people and complain, and rather than going directly to somebody, right? And we all do that, right? And it's gossip, it's all that thing. But really, the healthiest thing for society is for kids to learn at a young age. Don't go to other people to talk smack behind other people's back. Go directly to the person that you're having issues with and see, like, hey, how can we get this worked out?
Yeah.
And again, I feel like if more institutions that deal with children, schools, camps, taught kids those skills, the future would look better. We'd actually have a more peaceful world.
Yeah, no, I 1000% agree with you there. As just imagine if everyone could, handle a problem, handle a situation like a normal person would. If I can come to anyone, which I can, and say, I got an issue with this, or I got an issue with you, or I got an issue with how you're handling this, or I got an issue with what you said, kind of thing, and just have a conversation about something you disagree with, just imagine the world that we would have. Just imagine the things that could get done, how productive things would be. I don't think we would have the amount of division we have in the country that we have. We have so much division, politically, religiously, gender-wise. We have so much division, right? So much. Everyone thinks they know better than the next person, right? There's many different groups out there, Facebook groups, group chats, things like that, whatever you want to call them, wherever you're getting them from, wherever you're part of, right? And every group thinks there's people in there that think they know better than the next person. They think they're the quote-unquote expert on different things and whatnot. And where was I going with that? I got really hot there for a second, but I totally forgot. But if we brought, I'll bring it back here. If we brought back being able to have that conversation, just say, hey, share with me your point of view, and I'll share with you mine. Share with me yours. You show me yours, I'll show you mine, kind of thing. Guys, it's a joke. It's a dad podcast. We're gonna make dirty jokes, okay? Chill. But if we are, I'm just gonna use this as an example because it's the best example that one can use. If we're on different sides of the aisle politically, which we could be, we don't know. We're not gonna get into that here. I save that for a different platform of mine. But if we share those things, and I listen to your point of view, you listen to my point of view on the same issue, maybe we find some middle ground there. Like, hey, you know what? We both agree on these parts of it. Let's have a deeper conversation. Maybe we're both thinking wrong, and maybe we both need to, come to a conclusion. Or maybe your point sway me, my point sway you. Either way, right? Maybe you hadn't looked at it from my perspective. Maybe I hadn't looked at it from your perspective, and from your beliefs and things like that. The amount of conversation that we do not have in our country from day to day, people to people, person to person, is astonishing, because we should be able to talk about these things. If someone's Christian and then someone's Catholic and then a Mormon or someone, if all three of those people can all come together and talk, I bet they would find a whole lot more middle ground than division. I bet they would all stop with the I'm better than you, I'm better than you, my religion is the best, my religion is the best, I do this, we do get blah, 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 blah. And what it takes at this point where we're at is the only thing that really unifies us as like a human species, not even like talking race or religion or gender or anything like that. The only thing that I really agree with that's in like mainstream media right now that brings us together is intelligent life from outside of Earth will bring us together if they start causing a threat to us. Because I think that'll wake everybody up and be like, whoa, we all kind of we should all probably come together on this and stop fighting each other and fight whatever that thing is up there, kind of thing. So I think that's the only thing that really brings us together at this point is aliens. And it's really sad that it's aliens, but until then, we're just going to keep fighting each other on every little thing that we can.
Yeah, I'd like to think that, as parents, that we can at least make a dent in that and teach our kids these skills that we're talking about, and for those of us who work with kids to be able to teach them, it's always an honor for parents to trust me with their kids at the camps that I ran.
Yeah, no, I work with kids every day. You know, I'm a mental health clinician, so I work with youth and families every day. I've coached a lot of sports, and we can do a lot of different things with our kids, right? We have a huge impact in that. Being able to, I keep going horse here, but so what exactly are some of those methods in parenting A to E that we can, that you can share with the listeners?
So one that is really, really powerful is to actually use your body to actually just get down to their level. Like it's so often that we as parents, and we're all guilty of it. I am too, I mean, here I am teaching this thing, but I am not perfect, is you'll yell across the room, hey, come to dinner, or hey, get off the Kindle or whatever it is. We need you to come down. And they don't respond, and they don't respond, and they don't respond. And whether it's my own
Oh, that's
children
my
or with
favorite.
camp,
That's my favorite thing.
yeah, right. It can be so frustrating. And yet, and same thing with campers, right? We'll like yell across the park at them. But what I found is if you go up to a child and you actually lower your body and you get eye to eye with them and you make a request, the difference that alone will make is huge. So if your listeners get anything else out of say, if you just take that one thing and put mindfulness to that, and you go to your kids and just lower yourself and look at them in the eye, get their attention, and ask them to, whatever it is you need, your cooperation rate, I'm not going to say it's going to be 100%, but it will go up significantly if you just do that. So that's an example of how to use your body and the affect, right? It's a really different thing than yelling across the room or standing above them, especially if you've got young children and you're towering over them. That can be really intimidating, but lowering yourself really does something relationally that is quite powerful. And I want to encourage all of the parents who are listening to this to just try that and notice, feel the difference in your own body in terms of the connection.
Most definitely. So for you, what has that experience been like? I'm just curious here to kind of switch gears a little bit. Raising a child with autism, and then also raising a neurotypical child. You know, that was about a 10-year overlap. And so what has that been like for you and for your wife, navigating those two very, very, very different waters?
That's a great question, Jay. Yeah. I think for most of us, when you find out you're going to have a baby, you start getting all these dreams and you get these visions. You think how
Mhm.
it's going to be, right? Like, cool, I'm going to have a kid and then raise them, and I'm going to do this with them. I'm going to do that with them. And you have all these ideas. And
Well, I bet, especially knowing you were going to have a boy, I bet a lot of that like came through for you just as a man. Like I've only had daughters, but you know, especially like knowing you're going to have a son, you think of all those like things that you're going to do, like father and son, hunting, fishing, guns, and sports, and motocross, and all these different things that are loud and outdoorsy and rough and rugged and really activate all the senses in the worst kind of ways for someone on the spectrum. Some of them in the best kind of ways as well. So it just depends on the individual. But no, continue, please. Sorry.
yeah. It's funny. We actually, we didn't know what we were having at that point. It was a surprise. And so we did for our second kid, we knew we were having a daughter, but for our first kid, we didn't know. We left it as a surprise. And so it was it was a shock to the system when, about a year in, my wife started getting an inkling that something's not quite right here. My son Jonah he was walking, kind of early and doing all that, but he wasn't talking at all. And, my wife was in a play group with other kids, and she just noticed that something was a little bit different, my son. And, and this was, my son's about to turn 21. We're recording in December of 2020. My son
Yeah. So
turns
this is like
21.
early 2000s. Then it's like
Yeah.
early 2000s
Yeah. So, at that point it was
before
like,
the
yeah, the rates of
yeah, but
autism back then was different, and so it wasn't as common a
significantly
thing.
lower.
Yeah. And even our own pediatrician, was like, oh, boys take longer to talk. Like, there's nothing to worry about. It was just a different time. People, their radars weren't as up for autism then. But, by 13, 14 months, and he still wasn't talking. And we ended up taking him in for an evaluation. And at 16 months, he got labeled as at risk for autism, because back then they wouldn't actually diagnose it. But it was shocking. And it was like, wow, he wasn't playing with toys regularly. He was lining things up and just kind of some of the classic stuff. And he wasn't
Yeah,
talking.
the
And
key sign.
yeah, right. And, and so it was scary. It was like really scary. And it was in many ways devastating, because the vision that you have for what your life's going to be, like the things you were talking about, oh, I'm going to go and play ball. You don't know if any of those things are going to happen. Like, I didn't know at that point if I would ever hear my own child say the word daddy or say the phrase, I love you. So all the visions that you have go out the window, and you get into the mode of like, okay, what can we do? So getting him occupational therapy and getting him speech therapy and getting ABA and floor time, and worked with all of these developmental specialists. And I know for a lot of families who have kids on the spectrum, their kids never speak. For Jonah, he did eventually, he does speak now, but he didn't speak till he was past 2 years old. And it was scary, but I did realize before he was verbally expressing himself, his expressive speech, his receptive speech was there. And that was interesting to see. But the other thing that was interesting about Jonah was that before he had words, he had melody. And I remember him being in his crib, maybe out 20 months old, and he starts singing, that's a melody. He was singing the ABCs, and music was in him. And so one of the things that we realize is you can have a vision of the kind of kid you want, but even for neurotypicals, that's probably never going to happen. The whole you get what you get, in many ways, and you do your best to kind of influence where you can. But our kids' disposition and their personalities are who they are. And so my job, and I think our job as parents, is to figure out who are your kids and how can you support them with who they are, rather than trying to mold them into who you think they should be. And so for Jonah, he's really musical. And he also, he's 20 now. I also learned at a young age that he's very into skateboarding. And so we cultivated his musicality. He's got perfect pitch. He got his first drum set at the age of 3, and he sits down at this little drum set. And he's like, doom, pop, doom, doom, and I'm like, what? And so we ended up getting him like a bigger drum set, and he's incredible. And he's been in bands, and he got really into DJing. So did he ever get a high school diploma? No, because that's not where his gifts are. He wasn't ever going to go to college. That's not his thing. And so to let go of those visions that you have and be like, well, this is who I have as a son. How do I celebrate him so that he can have the best life that he has with his gifts? And so it was humbling, and at times it was scary, but man, my son is awesome. He's like such an extraordinary guy. He's just recently started his own business teaching kids how to skateboard.
Wow.
We started a channel years ago when he was younger called Parks and Pals. And so we wanted to do a #1 hit song from every year starting in 1958. And I'm a professional musician, so we brought in different friends of mine, and we ended up doing 6 or 7 episodes, and he just didn't really want to continue, unfortunately. If he ever wants to, I would pick it up again. We did 6 or 7 episodes, but you could see, like, when he's sitting down at a drum set, everything is equal. Like, it's just musicians who are playing music and celebrating life. And same thing with his skateboarding. When he's on a skateboard, or when he's teaching kids skateboard, he's not, a human with autism. He's a guy playing drums, or he's a guy on a skateboard teaching kids. And it's his place where he's got peace and where his anxiety lowers. And I think that's true for all of us. There are things that speak to our own soul. And so, but it was a different journey, back to your question, then raised my daughter, who spoke, typical age and all that. But it was the same process of, who is she? What is she into? And how do we honor that? She's super into reading. She's great academically. She's already talking about wanting to go to a great college. And I'm not attached to any of that. I learned to let go of that years ago. I just want her to live with a certain level of peace and be true to her gifts and to her soul, and to add to society with those gifts. So but it's been a vastly different experience. I mean, there's my own anxiety is dropped because I don't, I don't have to worry about things. We try to hang out with other parents with my son, and other parents were just hanging out while their kids were all playing together. And my wife and I couldn't do that because we had to worry about, is Jonah okay? And is he going to do something to bother the other kid? Like, there's so much stress that we ended up isolating. And I think a lot of parents who have kids with special needs end up isolating. And if there's any parents who have kids with special needs, I just really want to do everything I can to encourage them to find other parents who are in similar boats, because isolating is one of the worst things you could do for yourself and for your own children.
Yeah.
But anyway,
No,
so it is vastly different to raise kids, one on the spectrum, one not. But I've learned a lot with both of them, and they both have inspired so much in me. Part of the Parenting A to E course that I put together was about being really present with your kid and creating memories that are joyful, so that when both of my kids look back on their childhoods, they're gonna have a lot of memories, and they're gonna have a lot of joyful memories. And the Parenting A to E is about taking the mundane parts of parenting, right? Because you could take your kids to Disneyland, but that's one day. Most of parenting is not that. Most of parenting is waking them up, giving them a bath, feeding them, hanging out with them. So how do you make sure they're washing their hands? How do you make those things, bedtime, how do you make those things, those rituals, memorable and connecting and joyful? That's what makes parenting amazing. And that's what my course is about. And so I teach the actual parenting, the affect, the full body, the full voice. But then how do you apply it? Music is one of the most powerful ways to create memories with your children. And so I have 14 songs that are for waking up, bedtime, bath time, playtime, bedtime. There's all these different things to create these memories. And when you do music ritually with your kids, they will remember their childhoods, and they'll remember those interactions with you. And then the other section of the Parenting AD courses, I've got 10 activities that are really super fun. And if you do them and you play with them with these activities, I'm a camp director, so like taking the best of what I've done with kids, like, here you go. They're fun. Your kids will remember, and it's just a way to have your parenting journey be also very, very joyful and connecting, and so that your kids will look back on their childhood and be like, wow, like my dad or my mom were so awesome. They were present. I remember we played this. I remember at bedtime, we did these rituals, and I'm going to do them with my own children one day. So that was really the power behind raising both these kids. They inspired music in me and songs that I know that they love, that they remember. I asked my daughter a few weeks ago, she's 10 now. I'm like, do you remember your diaper changes? And she's like, oh yeah. And she mentioned 2 songs that I would always do with her during diaper changes. So I want parents to be able to use the tools that are available. And often they don't realize, especially, as a professional musician, a lot of parents don't realize the absolute power of using music.
yeah. No, I feel like I'm about to sneeze. Maybe not. If I sneeze randomly here in the next like 2 minutes, it's because I feel
I'll
it
give you a
like in
bless
my
you or a
nose,
good tight. Go for it.
or something. Like I feel it, but that's not what I was gonna say. But I was gonna respond to just your journey with your son in particular here. I have a 4-year-old right now, and I'm really sorry. I mean, I work in mental health, and it's always been something I've tried really hard to do. Is like I'm not gonna like diagnose my kids. I'm not gonna try to say they have this, that, or the other. It's really difficult. But I notice with my 4-year-old especially, like there's some things that are just off, that just aren't the same as my 7-year-old. Of course, 2 kids aren't the same. No 2 kids are the same. But my 7-year-old's very much like very neurotypical, very behaved, very much an oldest child, very much like your daughter. Loves books, loves reading, loves art, loves school, great at academics. Heck, she's gonna be testing here. She probably already tested by the time this came out, but for going forward in school to be in like a kind of like a gifted and talented like kind of program, to where if she completes it all the way through high school, then she'll have like college credits and all these different things. Like she'll be well on a track. Like she'll get special placement in different schools and things like that. Really cool. That she's like on that track right now. Super proud of her. But like my 4-year-old, like there's just some things that are just just off. I don't know if it's just age, but it's like I've been through this age before, and it's like, what is this? Because this isn't like other, like she does fine with other kids. She does fine socially, but like at the same time she doesn't. Like she's just a little off. Like she just misses some things. Like she's like in her own little world, it seems, kind of thing. And so like starting to have those conversations more and more, like, so this is, I don't want to take her through because I think she's too young and she's 4, and I don't want to take her to a doctor because it's going to be because she's a girl, and then doctors are really particular, and it's got to be really clear and obvious, and all these things. So it's like let's just wait, another year of preschool, another before she can go into kindergarten even. So it's fine. Let's just wait for right now. But something that's on my mind personally. So, but his journey, and I wanted to mention about just the child with autism and their mind. Their brain is such a beautiful, beautiful thing, right? To where they have talents that you and I don't have, right? Where they can be super talented at one particular thing that's beyond belief. And it just comes so naturally to them because that's just how they're wired. But as for every single person, all of us are wired in a certain way. Like I feel very comfortable, like behind a microphone. I don't care if my voice sounds weird. It's not deep and sultry and delicious like you hear on the radio kind of thing and whatever and things like that. I feel super comfortable behind a microphone talking to near strangers just about whatever they're into and having a conversation for an hour. I feel very comfortable doing that. And we all have our comfort zones. We all have those things that we're really comfortable with. But a child with autism, man, if you can find them their niche, man, they're going to be so successful if you can find them their niche and what they thrive in, the area where they thrive in, the area where they're most comfortable, the area where they can communicate. And communication is communication. Kind of going back to that as well, to where yes, it may not, and this is just kind of for parents now, not for you in particular, Craig, but if your child is a late talker or something, there are different ways to foster that communication. You can communicate it through music. You can communicate it through maybe sign language. You can communicate through maybe it's pointing, maybe it's finding a way to non-verbally communicating. Yes, it's going to be frustrating because you just want your kid to talk to you and communicate. But if they can't, they can't. You have to adapt. You have to be able to adapt to them and learn their expressions and learn how they're going to talk, the language they're trying to talk to you with. Because, at the end of the day, communication is communication. You're going to have to take what you get and learn what you can learn and work with your kid to how you got to work with them. So it's really important. It's very, very important.
Yeah,
There.
and thank God there's it's a different world in terms of autism now than when my son was really young, 20 years ago. And there's just a lot more specialists and therapists and resources out there. And and for the parents who have kids who are more severely impacted where they are nonverbal, like those are really hard situations. But I do believe that every human has gifts and to get into their world and to relate. And there are ways, and that's one of the reasons why I titled my thing "Parenting A to E," the affect. That was something that, especially before Jonah was verbal, one of the ways to get into his world was to use really, really big affect with my body and with my facial expressions and to follow his lead. And so to build that trust, because you're right, Jay, like there's other ways to connect with human beings beyond just using words. And that's something that I learned before Jonah became verbal was we were able to connect. I remember doing all sorts of things. I remember when he was super young, like maybe 11 months old, I'd put him on the bed and I would like go and hide on one side and pop up and be like, now I'm over here, and have a big affect. And he'd look over and smile. And then I'd go and hide and I'd crawl to the other side of the bed. I'd be like, now I'm over here. And he would, he would laugh. And it's like to be able to have that connection was so beautiful. And whether our kids are verbal, nonverbal, autistic, at the heart of relationship is connection. That's ultimately what we all want. We all want to be connected with and connected to others. We want to be able to be seen, heard, and understand, and be understood, and then to be able to give others that gift. Man, there's nothing better than that. And I'm a firm believer that it's through understanding the use of our own body and our own voice that we can manifest that level of connection.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you just gave me the title for the episode as well, so I appreciate that. But you also mentioned, that interactive aspect of this, and what you're mentioning there, like with your son. That modeling is so important. Like modeling those facial expressions, modeling those emotions, modeling those all those things are not only important for, well, I would say they're crucial for children on the spectrum to be able to see those things modeled every day, in a bigger aspect so they can learn them, like a big sad or a big happy or a really big mad or something like that. Like they have to see those things at like a big scale to like understand them for their scale. But for like the neurotypical child as well, that is also very important for them. You can maybe dial it back a little bit for them, a little bit, but those things are very important for them to be modeled and learn as well. So they can pick up on, oh, someone's sad. What could I do? And those social cues and things like that, those are very, very important. Or it's like, that person's upset. Let's leave them alone. Or that person's mad. Let's give them space for a minute. Or that person's really happy. That's who you want to go up to and play with. And you mentioned also the isolation part of it is we got to get, we just, I've coached several kids over the last few years in baseball and whatnot. I've had neurotypical and neurodiverse boys and girls on my team the last few years, right? It just so happens the cookie crumbles with me, and I'm the team that has like two, three, or four of them at the same time, which is chaotic, but it's also a lot of fun. My number one thing there is give your kids a freaking chance. A lot of people say, like, especially for like that kindergarten age, 5, 6 year old playing t-ball and whatnot, say, oh, we're just hurting cats and letting them run and play or whatever. It's like, no, it's like, let's give them a chance to actually learn how to play ball. Let's give them a chance to actually learn how to really swing a bat and not just spin around and spin out of their shoes 100% of the time. Let's teach them, fundamental, like basic age appropriate fundamentals. Let's teach them how to field a ground ball. Let's teach them how to throw a ball. Let's teach them that they throw to, yes, they can't make that throw all the way to first, but let's at least teach them that they're supposed to do that. Do they get it there? No. Let's teach them that, okay, we all don't go and run towards the ball, right? If it comes close to you, you field it, you make a play. Not everyone goes and dog piles on the ball. That's not okay. Let's teach them these basic fundamentals, especially for our children that may be, neurodiverse. And if you give them the chance, they're going to surprise you. You just have to give them the chance. Your children can't learn. The brain itself can't learn if you never give it the chance. So for me, my advice there, and this is not like a clinical advice, this is just like parent advice here. I really try to stay away from like giving like any kind of mental health, like real advice on the podcast here. But just as like a parent and like a coach is sign your kids up. Sign your kids up for the sport. Let them go and try. Let them go and participate. Because even if they get like sensory overload or they have a really hard time or whatever, guess what? You can still be there to support. You can say, hey, I'll be there to help and be on the field to help my kid, which is highly encouraged. Please do that. Please don't, sign them up and drop them off and expect the coach to deal with it. Because not every coach is one like myself that understands and knows how to work through it and work with that. Your typical coach does not, and they need you there to like help and support so that they can, coach kind of thing. But let them participate. Don't hold them back. Take them to the park. Take
Yeah, and
them
Jey,
to the social gathering.
totally. And the other thing too is that my son is really into sports. Where I'm at, I'm in San Diego. It's a big metropolitan area, and so there are resources. There, Jonah has been part of special needs ice hockey, an ice hockey league, special needs baseball, special needs basketball, and so he's now he's older. He actually helps coach younger kids with special needs, and it's really sweet. So if any of listeners of your podcast are in bigger areas, seek that out, because I totally agree with that. Like, sign them up. But if you have a kid with special needs, a lot of the bigger cities will have these places where special coaches who have patience and understand who they're working with and will teach them these skills and have them feel a part and connected with other kids and with other adults and a part of community. And that's beautiful. I just wanted to say it because I think what you're saying here is really, really valuable.
Yeah, no, like you gotta let them participate. You gotta let them just let them, please. That's all I'm asking. If they can't handle it, okay. Some days are going to be better than others, but try. If you can, you have the means, you have the ability. Try, because your kid will probably shock you in their ability to learn, to develop, to catch on, to maybe find a space. Maybe it's on that baseball field. Maybe it's on that basketball court. Maybe it's in the ice hockey rink. Maybe it's on the track and field. Who knows where it's at? but maybe, just maybe, by you just giving them the chance, they find somewhere and they just feel normal for a minute, for an hour, for a couple hours a week. They just find somewhere where they're just like all the other kids. They can run, they can play, they can do all the same things, maybe better than the other kids. Natural talent, but you got to give them the chance. If you never give them the chance, they never have the opportunity. And so that's our job as parents, to give them the chance. If we give them the chance, hey, you never know what happens next. And maybe it's a catastrophic failure. That's okay too. Failure is part of the journey, and failure is part of learning. What? Yes. Sorry, 7-year-old around the corner over there. I guess they woke up finally. They slept in pretty good. But anyways, anything else that you want to mention here now that we're towards the end here and getting close to wrapping up?
Yeah, if any parents are interested in parenting A to E, which is called From Stress to Smiles, Turning the Mundane into the Memorable, write to me at craigparks@parentingharmony.com. And if you mention this podcast, I will give you really, really big discount on it, because I want parents to have this. There's also a Facebook community for those who get the course. And I also have a book out called How to Stress Less and Have More Fun with Your Kids. And so that's available too. And if you take this short book and you utilize the information in it, I promise it'll be transformational for you. I really want parents to be able to be empowered, enjoy their parenting journey a lot more. And I just want to say to you, Jey, thank you for having me on. For dads to be able to listen to other dads and to learn from each other and support each other is huge. Men often aren't encouraged to express themselves emotionally and spiritually in these kinds of ways. And I think for you to have a forum like this adds more beauty and love and peace to the world, which we all need. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Yeah, no, my goal for this year, for 2025, is with this podcast, is what I hope and pray that it becomes is the number one dad podcast. I want to become the number one dad podcast. I know there's some stiff competition up there. I know the guys that are the stiff competition, but I truly believe that my platform is different, is special, and offers, 200 plus episodes of just really, really good stuff for dads, to be able to relate, be able to place a solace, be able to chillax and get a moment to just listen to their favorite podcast, or to maybe grill, mow the lawn, or something. Maybe change dirty diapers. Who knows what they're doing? But they get to just sit back, relax, and listen to a good conversation. I feel like they're part of the conversation, and agree, disagree. If you agree, disagree, send messages. I'm happy to respond. I love responding. I know that this podcast has saved at least a couple lives for people that have found it when they were on the edge there. So, and I'm really grateful that I was able to have that impact and have those conversations. So really,
you're doing great work. Yeah, you're really doing great work. I really appreciate it a lot. The other thing that I'd like to mention to dads is, I'm a songwriter and a professional musician. There's a song that I did for my kids called Dancing on Daddy's Shoulders. And if you've got young kids, if you go to parentingharmony.com, you can get this song for free. It also includes a video of me explaining how to do this. And then also there's a PDF with lyric sheet and with connection points. And I guarantee you prop your kid up on your shoulders and you sing this very easy song, and you do this ritualistically, every day. You and your child will have so much fun, and your kid will look back with really positive memories. So I just want to give that gift. Again, it's a free resource. Just go to parentingharmony.com and you'll get the song, the video, and the lyrics, everything for free.
I love that. Well, I'll also mention that here in the closing. But my last question for you, Craig, is what advice would you offer to a young dad, age like 18 to 22? I became a dad at 22. So I was super young. So a dad who's just starting out their fatherhood journey. What's one or two pieces of advice that you would offer to them?
So I know we talked earlier about isolating, and I think that the best thing that you can do is get a mentor, if not more. Don't try to go it alone, because there are so many men who've been on this journey and who have learned so much that you don't have to maybe repeat mistakes that others have made. So get a mentor, find a man who's ahead of you in the journey, who you trust, who cares for you, and who you could talk to and confide in, so you don't feel alone in the journey. That would be huge.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with that more. Having good people around you is so important. Having some kind of community, having some kind of sense of community is so important. To be able to build that, find that, have that as part of your just journey. People are always willing to offer it. You just got to seek it out and you just got to find it. So Craig, thank you so much for sharing your insights, experiences with me today, with our listeners today. Your passion for empowering parents to create joyful, memorable experiences with their kids is truly inspiring. For our listeners who want to learn more about Craig's parenting A to E method, his music, or the work he does, you can visit www.parentingharmony.com. And as a special gift, like Craig just mentioned, there is offering a free interactive song, complete with a lyric sheet and video explaining how to get the most out of this exclusive track. It's a wonderful way to bring more music and connection into your home. So thank you all for tuning into the Young Dad Podcast. Remember, it's the simple, everyday moments that often become our most cherished memories. Let's strive to reduce stress, embrace creativity, and fill our homes with joy and laughter. Until next time, take care and keep making those magical moments.